All right, guys, I'm going to change it up a little bit today. Instead of me throwing the topic at you guys and then us just going around the horn reacting, we're going to change it up by I'm sending it out to you guys, and you guys will each present the biggest story that you guys have tracked this week. Because let's be honest, this has been one hell of a week across Minnesota sports. There's been a lot that's gone on, and so I don't even want to mention all of it because I don't want to give you guys the topics and maybe burn one of those. So let's just go around the horn. Joe, I think we'll start with you because I have a sense that you're going to go in the most controversial fashion. So I want to start there. Let's go there. What the hell is that?
Here's the story we're going to talk about is related to a man who probably has met this little guy, Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, geez.
Okay. Aaron Rodgers is going to be a Minnesota Viking in a matter of hours or days. It just seems like there's too much smoke. There are too many dots that are getting connected. All these backup quarterbacks, the journeymans, the veterans who would be great for J.J. McCarthy in the event that McCarthy got hurt as the starter, they're dropping like flies. I mean, every day, 2, 3 of these quarterbacks go off the board. And then you have Diana Rossini, who's as locked in as anybody is in NFL reporting circles, and her colleague Michael Silver really pushing this narrative that, well, Silver even saying that Rodgers, quote, first choice, end quote, is the Minnesota Vikings. Where is he getting that information? He's not just spitballing, right? There's a reason they keep pushing this on everybody. Diana Rossini is saying, I think the Vikings have to do this, meaning she's got intel that says Aaron Rodgers would do it if the offer came. So we may literally be sitting on a fault line right here, boys, where it's going to erupt. There's going to be a massive football quake, and it might be, Aaron Rodgers on the Richter scale coming to Minnesota for a one-hit wonder, a one-year wonder. J.J. McCarthy, you just have to deal with it. You're going to have to deal with it like Aaron had to deal with it behind Brett Favre, the way Jordan Love had to deal with it behind Aaron Rodgers. I really believe, guys, with all of these dots being connected, we are waiting on the Vikings, not Aaron Rodgers, for this domino to fall. I'd love to get your thoughts on this because it really feels like it's going to happen.
Here's where I stand on this. I'm in agreement with you. I think it's pretty clear at this point, and why wouldn't it be, that if Aaron Rodgers could go to any of the teams who still need a quarterback this year, it would be the Vikings. And, I mean, it's kind of obvious. The Vikings are the best setup in the NFL for a quarterback with Kevin O'Connell, with Justin Jefferson, and all of these other pieces on offense. They've upgraded the offensive line this week. They've upgraded the defense this week. Like, if you're Aaron Rodgers, of course you want to go there. It's on the Vikings. The ball is in their court. And that might be, to an extent, why Rodgers is waiting out and not signing with the Steelers or with the New York Giants or whoever it might be, because he's waiting to see if the Vikings actually throw their hat into the ring and come calling and give him an offer and make this Brett Favre scenario a potential reality. And the longer time that passes without the Vikings signing a different quarterback, the more I start to think that they may be seriously considering this thing. I still lean against it happening if I'm picking on the side of 50-50.
Why?
Just because of all of the concerns that it is inherently a risk if you sign Aaron Rodgers and you bring him and his personality and the media circus and all of that into your locker room, into your culture that you've spent the past 3 years building, what it could potentially do for J.J. McCarthy's timeline and confidence and whatnot. And then, I mean, I'm not positive if 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers is good enough to have the 2009 Brett Favre season. He might be.
Don't you think? Let's go to McCarthy, because if we're worried about his mental well-being, his mental health, what kind of alpha dominant dog quarterback is he if he couldn't let an all-time great come in and play 1 year without it ruining his confidence?
Yeah, that's probably not a real factor in it. I think McCarthy would be fine sitting a year. I threw that out offhand. I wouldn't be actually worried about that as a concern. I would be worried about Aaron Rodgers' toxicity coming into the culture and the locker room and things aren't going great, he starts pointing fingers and people start being pro Aaron Rodgers and anti Aaron Rodgers in the locker room, and it just becoming a source of tension and awkwardness, and I don't know. I just think it has the potential to derail things and get messy. It also has the potential to have the Vikings be a Super Bowl favorite if Rodgers plays at a high level. But I think that's what the Vikings probably, as we speak, still are weighing. Is it worth the risk?
It's
we'll
this simple. Here's how simple it is. You ask yourself 2 questions. 1, if we get Aaron Rodgers, will we win the Super Bowl? Maybe. If we don't get Aaron Rodgers, will we win the Super Bowl? Probably not. So what road are you going to go down? I mean, you have to take the road of least resistance to a Super Bowl. I mean, he's the guy who gives you the best chance if he is good. And nobody knows for sure if he's good still or not because he played for the most dysfunctional organization in professional sports the last 2 seasons. And his Achilles blew. But I mean, if Brady can play till he's 44 years old, why can't Aaron Rodgers? Aaron Rodgers has more mobility than Brady ever had, even with the repaired Achilles. So there's so many things that say, do it, do it, do it, do it, do it. So I'm curious, like, what's that little guy on the shoulder, Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah's shoulders saying? Is it saying, oh, we don't want to spend the money? I don't think that's it. I don't think that's it one bit.
I think a factor worth considering is if J.J. McCarthy is the guy that they think J.J. McCarthy is based on last offseason, the one training camp game, the reason they drafted him 10th overall, it's not out of the question that he could be immediately better than 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers.
Very well could be. Yep.
I think he might have more mobility at 22 years old, certainly, depending on the knee. And just he could hit the ground running and be really, really good. So I think with Rodgers, there's tens of thousands of more snaps of sample size and experience, but it's a fascinating decision where a lot of quarterbacks are in their mid-20s or their mid-30s. We're talking deciding between a 41-year-old and a 22-year-old here, just on complete opposite ends of the spectrum.
Well, you also have to look at it from like big picture. What's the best? What gives us the best chance to win no matter what in 2025? Is it J.J. McCarthy starting with Joe Flacco as the backup or Jameis Winston? Or is it Aaron Rodgers starting with J.J. McCarthy ready to come in if Rodgers gets hurt? I think the upside with Rodgers 1 and McCarthy 2 is higher than it is with McCarthy 1. If McCarthy got hurt and you had to turn to Flacco or Winston or whoever this backup quarterback is, I think instantly you're knocked off that tier of Super Bowl contenders. Instantly, right? You're probably not there. But if you go from Rodgers, let's say he gets hurt, McCarthy comes in and he's everything that the Vikings think he is, you may not drop that far, right? Like, so what's your floor? The ceiling is obviously Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers, but your floor with Rodgers and McCarthy is still super high.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is if you do sign Aaron Rodgers, you're signing up for 8 months of an entire fan base who does like to hate Aaron Rodgers, possibly saying we need to bench him and move to J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah.
And while the ceiling might be higher with a player like Rodgers, he's 41 years old and he could play like he did last year. And I think that would lend towards an entire season of like, we need to bench this guy. We need to bench this guy.
That's the risk. Yep.
Yeah, that could be a lot of chaos.
And he's not coming in to not start, right? Like there's
no
world where Rodgers is backing up McCarthy.
Exactly.
I can't see that.
Not unless he did some mushrooms and DMT that really opened his eyes to being a Mother Teresa type and mentoring the younger quarterbacks. Unless that's happened, which, by the way, probably about a 25% chance that has actually happened. So it's possible. Don't rule it out. But I don't think he's quite that nice of a guy just yet.
Another risk is you bring him in and you give J.J. McCarthy the wrong mentor or influential figure, and he goes down some psychotic path. And
he already
becomes a shaman in the woods and decides to stop playing football forever.
J.J. McCarthy's already handing out free food to the less privileged and the homeless. He's buying tents for people. He meditates by the goalposts. He uses Latin phrasing in his Instagram posts because he's a deep thinker. This man has found his consciousness, his subconsciousness even. He has located it. He's at a different place than most people, so he's unpredictable, and that's scary, and we all should understand that. But the man can handle Aaron Rodgers as his mentor, and he would likely join him on a trip to Machu Picchu and have some ayahuasca and vomit together.
Isn't that a problem, though? Wouldn't that be a problem?
I don't think so, because he's already introduced himself to the subconscious world. And
All
once
right.
you've done that, you're limitless. You know, you can take yourself out of body, see yourself from above, and understand that, again, guys, this human body is just a vehicle, and everything else is lifelong and everlasting.
This went exactly where I knew it was going to go. This is great. I guess my question on this is, we keep talking about the Vikings as if they're in win now mode. And yes, everything that they've done this offseason, Will, has pointed to they're building to win now. But everything over the past 3 years has shown this to be, yes, they want to stay competitive, but they also understand there's a timeline to all of this. And they drafted J.J. McCarthy with the 10th overall pick, understanding that it's going to be a roller coaster with the young quarterback. And it seemed like they were okay with that there's going to be some ups, there's going to be some downs because he's a young quarterback learning to play at this level. Why all of a sudden are they switching now that they've spent this wad of cash in the offseason? Why would they all of a sudden switch to, all right, we got to win absolutely this season, otherwise it's all a bust? I guess that part of it doesn't make sense to me.
Well, you just laid out why I still think it's not going to be the Vikings for Rodgers. I think Kevin O'Connell is almost certainly tempted by the idea of bringing one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time into this offense and going for it for a year. But I think cooler heads will ultimately prevail, and it won't happen because that would be kind of throwing away the plan that they've built up for the last few years, where they were setting everything up to build around the rookie contract and draft a young quarterback and have the potential biggest advantage in sports of a very good quarterback on a rookie deal. And I don't necessarily think that they are going to just deviate from that course and bring in Rodgers. I wouldn't be shocked at this point if it happens by any means, but I still think ultimately they're going to stick with the McCarthy plan and move forward. But I mean, we'll see. Like I said, the longer this goes on, the more I start to think it might be a real possibility.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting point, that this hasn't been decided yet, whether that's on Aaron Rodgers' side, which I think we all kind of figured that Aaron Rodgers was going to take his time so he stays in the limelight and the media spotlight as long as humanly possible, because as we know, that's what he loves, is more conversation about him. So not surprised that it's taking that long, but it's as you said, as this goes on, it's going to just up that pressure and up that hype and excitement that he may come to Minnesota and complete the Brett Favre arc, which I don't know whether I like that idea or not this time around. I think that's the end of that one.
Oh, one second.
Yeah, okay.
Because
final topic.
The Brett Favre arc is important here. We have to understand that Aaron Rodgers is the ultimate competitor, and his whole career has been about outdoing Brett Favre. So Brett Favre came up short in Minnesota. Aaron Rodgers is now possibly going to be presented with an opportunity to do more in Minnesota than Brett Favre did. To dunk on Brett Favre one last time has to be in Aaron Rodgers' mind. Has to be. I don't care how good they get along now and they walk around in Brett Favre's big Mississippi backyard together for Netflix documentary conversations. I'm just saying, the man wants to dunk on Brett Favre one last time, and if he gets the opportunity, he's going to take it. There's a reason Mike Silver says Minnesota is his first choice, and there are layers to it. It's not just
He'd be
Super Bowl.
stupid to not have Minnesota as his favorite, though. They're literally the best situation.
Yeah, and it just works out perfectly because he's going to want to outdo Brett Favre.
I don't think you have to really source that information that Minnesota is his number one destination. I mean, as Will pointed out, look at everything around the Vikings. You would be stupid to not want to go to Minnesota. Why do you think Russell Wilson tweeted that about Harrison Smith the other day? He clearly wants to come here. He doesn't want to go to Cleveland. He wants to try and get in with the good graces of the leaders of Minnesota.
Yeah, nobody wants Russell Wilson, though. Ever since he did that Subway commercial, nobody wants him.
No one wants Aaron Rodgers, let's be honest.
Everybody wants Aaron Rodgers.
All right.
You don't
Will,
like
what's your...
the Danger Witch, Joe?
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, the Danger Witch. That's dangerous.
Oh boy,
Man.
that veered off topic quickly.
Yeah.
Will, what's your biggest story of the week?
Well, I was going to talk about the Vikings free agency and all the work that they did in the trenches, but we've talked about the Vikings a good amount. We just did a whole video the other day on that people can go check out. My biggest story of the week that I've gotten sucked into is that the Timberwolves are winning the NBA Finals.
Yeah,
Ooh,
baby.
look at this.
They are so very back. Like, this whole season has been a rotating scale of we're so back and it's so over. It has never been more back for the Timberwolves than it is right now on Friday morning. And if they lose to the Magic tonight, then it'll be slightly less back. But I don't think that'll happen. They've won 6 in a row. They got a 5-game homestand coming up where they will be favored in all 5 games, often by 15 points, because 3 of the games are against the Jazz and the Pelicans. Like, they could legitimately stretch this win streak to double digits. They're only 3.5 games, I think, behind like the second, third seed. Maybe 4.5 behind the 2 seed. 3.5 behind the Lakers. Like, they are clicking at the right time. They are fully healthy. Julius Randle, who I will admit, I was one of the many people who wanted to see him traded at the deadline. I have to eat some crow on that, because he is playing extremely good basketball, all NBA type of basketball that he played with the Knicks the last few seasons right now. He's being decisive with the ball. It's not being as sticky as it was early in the season. The lapses in defensive effort haven't been there. He is playmaking at a really high level. He's doing bully ball. He's rebounding. It looks really good. And then Dante DiVincenzo is just firing on all cylinders as well. And the Wolves, I mean, 1 through 8, even Mike Conley's been making his threes lately. So there's a lot you can talk about with this Wolves team, but they look again like a team that can get back to the Western Conference Finals, if not go further, because the Thunder and the Lakers are scary, but the Wolves have the Nuggets number. The Grizzlies are a concern as well, but I mean, there's no team in the West that the Wolves cannot beat in a 7-game series if they play the way they're playing right now. So that's been fun lately.
I mean, I would add to it, but there's really nothing to add to it. They're just who we thought they would be, right? Like, this whole time, we mentioned before Julius Randle got hurt that they were looking like a top 4 team in the West. Well, now everybody's back. And like Will said, Conley's shooting like 47% from deep over the last 2 months. And all of a sudden you have an absolute juggernaut. And I don't know how many people had to rip me for saying they have the deepest team in Wolves history and one of the deepest teams in NBA history. I'm not wrong. You guys can all go shove it.
You're being vindicated lately.
Dude, I'm telling you, this team is ridiculously deep. I mean, no longer are we having conversations about Rob Dillingham, because there's no room for Rob Dillingham in the rotation. They can go 9-10 deep, and all 9-10 guys are very, very skilled. They're playing defense at a high level. They're operating on offense at a high level. It looks beautiful. It looks like the beautiful game that the Spurs used to play, and that's a credit to Julius Randle for being an excellent facilitator. And then you've got the alpha and Anthony Edwards, who just gets better and better and better and better. And Jaden McDaniels is scoring. I mean, this is a juggernaut, boys. It's a juggernaut. We have always said Denver, very good with Jokic, but they have no depth. And now Aaron Gordon's hurt, and they're not even close to being a team that resembles something that could go deep in the playoffs or the NBA Finals. The Lakers with LeBron's groin, controversy, conspiracy. Is it just his typical March break, getting ready for the playoffs, or is he actually dinged up? Because if he's actually dinged up, they're not anywhere near as good as they are with him in the lineup. And again, they've added the right pieces, and they look very dangerous. And OKC is an absolute machine. But if you put Minnesota and OKC in a cage for 7 games, I think Minnesota's coming out of that cage with a victory. So Memphis scares me a little bit. They've got the size, they got the defense, they got the shooting, they've got Ja. But push comes to shove. If you had to pick a team to represent the West in the finals right now, I don't know how you pick anybody other than the Wolves, Thunder, or Lakers. And the way the Wolves are going, I would pick the Wolves.
Yeah, Tony, when you look at their strength of schedule remaining, according to Tankathon, they have the third easiest schedule remaining over the rest of the season. And as Will pointed out, it's not a far leap to climb up the Western Conference standings, just half a game back of Golden State, who have been extremely hot lately since getting Jimmy Butler, 3.5 games back of the Rockets for fifth, and Lakers for fourth. So it's a very short climb back up, and they've got the schedule kind of laid out in front of them, Tony, to be able to make that climb and build some momentum going into the playoffs like we saw Dallas do last year.
Yeah, I think Chris Finch deserves a lot of credit. There were so many questions with how all of these pieces were going to fit in, and he's figured it out. It's really hard, I think, for at the NBA level to do that, especially today's day and age. There's so many personalities, and he's figured out how to make them all fit together.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know who else can fit personalities together? Kevin O'Connell. Aaron Rodgers should scare no one.
The last thing I just say on the Wolves is I think the offense has been a thing of beauty at times recently. I mean, they've been shooting the three at a really high level, but it's the level that they can go to defensively. That was their identity last year. That was their ceiling raiser last year. The one of the big things that made that season so special, and I think they're finding that again this year because they have better defensive pieces than any other team in the league. You got Rudy Gobert in the middle. You've got Jaden McDaniels. You've got Anthony Edwards can go to that level when he locks in on the ball. And then Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Dante DiVincenzo off the bench just has incredible off-ball defensive instincts. So that is something that not every team has, the ability to be that balanced on both ends of the floor and play elite level basketball on both ends of the floor. And then, I mean, you can throw Jalen Clark out there as your ninth man if you need a rest for somebody in terms of on-ball defense on a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or Luka or whoever. So, yeah, it is. I mean, the Wolves are still in the 7 seed right now because the Warriors and Rockets are also winning a lot, but this opportunity of schedule in front of them, they should at least move up to the 6, if not even higher over the next couple weeks.
It feels like we talk about in the NBA when these teams are kind of building up to become these really good teams and get to the championship. We always talk about, and Cat mocked this last year, of having to lose in the playoffs and take your lumps in the playoffs. Well, last year they got to the Western Conference Finals and they got smoked by the Mavericks. How much do we think what they went through last year will help them when they get to the playoffs this year, Will?
Yeah, I think it absolutely will. I mean, they had to lose in the first round a couple times, Memphis and Denver, before kind of building up those scars and being able to go on last year's run. And it's a different team now. Cat's gone. You got Randall and DiVincenzo in, but those guys were just in the playoffs with the Knicks last year too. So there's lots of experience here. I think the Wolves, I think Anthony Edwards in particular, knows what it's going to take to really make an extended run. And I mean, this team even getting back to the Western Conference Finals would be a pretty massive achievement given how up and down they've been all season. They were just barely above 500 about a week ago, before this winning streak. But yeah, they have. I think they have the ability to get to that stage and then potentially even get beyond it. They really do.
Here's how all Timberwolves fans feel watching what they're experiencing right now. This is a frog with a very long leg. It's a paper towel holder for all you sickos out there who thought it was something else.
I didn't know what it was. I'm also just questioning where you shop at this point.
I found this at an antique store by St. Cloud, which, by the way, you want to find some weird stuff, go to St. Cloud.
As evidenced by this frog with an exceptionally long leg.
Yes.
All right, Tony, I know you've got a press conference or Mark Coyle statement to get to here in a couple minutes. So what's your big story of the week?
Yeah, I mean, as for the other basketball team in town, the Gophers making their long-awaited coaching change after 4, I guess, disappointing years, moving on from Ben Johnson. And I think the story is where do they go? There seems to be a lot of criticism about the investment into men's basketball and how serious the school is about the team. And I think this hire will tell a lot. There are a lot of rumors floating around of whose decision it was to hire Ben Johnson. And it's a really big decision now for Mark Hoyle and this administration, because if they make the wrong hire, it could send the men's basketball program down a pretty dark road, I guess, of one of the worst stretches in the program history. So if they make the right hire, they could bounce back very quickly. I think we've seen for all the teams at the University of Minnesota, when they're winning, there's big fan base. A lot of people like to hop on the bandwagon. So the question is, who do they hire? Nico Medved from Colorado State is starting to get a lot of buzz, and he seems to be the number one candidate. And from my understanding, I think the Gophers are going to make him say no. If he does say no, I think there's a lot of other options and talented young up and coming coaches. They could go a very unique route and bring in Ryan Saunders and then treat the program almost like an NBA team with a GM and more of a front office feel. Or they could look deeper at the mid-major route and bring in someone like Eric Henderson from South Dakota State. I think a lot of the big names that Gophers fans like to float around, like Brian Dutcher and maybe even Johnny Tower from St. Thomas, I think are personally off the table. But it should be a really interesting couple of weeks here before the transfer portal opens, because I think it is going to move pretty soon or pretty fast. And I think we're going to learn who the next coach of the Gophers is pretty soon here.
Joe, I know yesterday.
What about that Drake coach, Ben McCollum? Is he going to Indiana? Or?
I keep hearing a lot of reports that that's the case. And
that dude can coach.
I do agree with that, and I think Indiana realizes that, and Minnesota does not have as deep of pockets as Indiana, and there's a lot of other openings, Virginia, NC State, which are big basketball schools. So Minnesota has interesting competition in the coaching carousel, and I think Ben McCollum's up for all of those jobs. So personally, I don't see him becoming the next coach of the Gophers, but it wouldn't shock me.
Joe, I know it's no Will Wade, but if it is Nico Medved, what's your excitement level for the Gophers going into next season? I know there's a lot of roster changes that have to be
I'd be pumped.
happen, but
I think he can coach an offense. I think he can put together a scheme and an offensive philosophy that is enjoyable to watch. His team score points, and they play defense. So, whether he can find the right players to make them fit, I think he's proven to be a coach who, and this is without watching a lot of Nico Medved coached basketball in my life, but the results speak for themselves. Like, you can recruit players and coach them up to their biggest potential rather than trying to fit, round pegs into circle holes or circle pegs into square holes, whatever the saying is, right?
Round pegs into circle holes. Those fit pretty well, I think.
I think those would fit pretty dang perfectly.
I think for 4 years in Minnesota, he was trying to get guys to play the same no matter what. Like we said yesterday in the video, Tony, Lukai Patterson is not Cam Christie, but I think he tried to make Lukai Patterson play like Cam Christie, and I think that's really bad. I think that's a really dumb way to approach basketball. So I think Nico Medved might have a different kind of mindset where he's going to put guys in positions to maximize their skill sets and, not force guys to play within a system. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't know. A lot of this is really infuriating as a lifelong Gophers fan because, Tony, you mentioned this yesterday. Mark Coyle sends out a press release saying, "Hey, I'm going to have media availability at 11:30 a.m. on Friday," and you're like, "It's for 10 minutes." 10 minutes? You scheduled that for 10? If this thing literally goes 10 minutes and he walks off that podium, it's an embarrassment. This guy owes at least 30 minutes to the public to answer a lot of hard questions. So you can't run and hide from this crap all day long, Mr. Coyle. And if he does a 10-minute press conference, I'm going to be pissed.
Especially after dropping the initial release at like 1:20 a.m.
Yeah,
which is,
right.
Is
which I still have a suspicion that some intern hit publish too early. That's what I think happened.
Yeah, it's really interesting with Coyle because he's a lot of people are questioning how much they prioritize basketball, and he's prioritizing his role in the NCAA selection committee over his real job. So that's why it's only lasting 10 minutes. So, I mean, if as a Gophers fan, I think a lot of people would question how much you prioritize your job if you're not Like, Minnesota pays him to be the athletic director. They don't pay him to be on the NCAA selection committee. So it's an interesting dilemma.
Yeah, for
Man,
sure.
I don't know.
Tony might hear about that one at a later date.
You might.
The one thing I would say is I feel like I'm an outsider in this, but the coaching hire is going to be important, but they also need to just have more resources and NIL and like administrative support. That seems to me to be just as important, if not more important, than coaching in modern college basketball, or I mean college football too, but basketball in particular, where each player matters so much. So I just you hope that they get that support and then they make a good hire, and those two things could work in tandem and improve the program.
A couple predictions here real quick. I think Cooper Kupp will sign with the Vikings probably by about 3:30 Friday afternoon. Aaron Rodgers should follow suit late Friday or early Saturday. That feels like it's going to be about right. And then I bet the Gophers announce a head coaching hire probably on Monday, right after Selection Sunday. That's what I think is going to happen over the next 72 hours. It's going to be crazy in Minnesota, so buckle up, baby.
Yeah, because we didn't have a crazy week this week, hence why we did this kind of a video today. Expect another busy week going forward. Go read all of our work over at Vikings, Twins, Timberwolves, and Gophers on SI. Appreciate you guys stopping by and chatting it out this week. A busy week this week across Minnesota sports. Plenty to read there over on those sites, and be sure to hit subscribe to the YouTube channel. It does help us get found. Also notifies you every time we post a new video here. We'll talk to you again next week with a topic and another topic across Minnesota sports. Talk to you then, Minnesota sports.